Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of EyeOnOshkosh. I'm your host Cheryl Hentz, and along with my co-host Sarah McAninch. Very happy to have you joining us on this edition. We are very pleased to welcome an old friend to the show, although he has not been on the show since he took office as the Winnebago County Executive. Gordon Hintz is here, and as I said, we're very pleased to have him here. We're going to be talking about all kinds of issues, county issues tonight, so welcome, Gordon.
Thanks for having me. It's
You
good
bet.
to be back.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is the longest stretch we've ever had where you've not been on the show.
Maybe, and I know we were going to be on a couple months ago, and then got bumped. So waited till summer.
Yeah. So, but that's a good thing. So anyway, okay. So I mentioned you've been in office since April of 2025. How has it been going so far?
You know, it's a constant challenge. It's different than my previous role serving the community down in the legislature. You know, I think one of the biggest challenges with county government overall is it provides so many essential services, but they're not in front of everybody every day. You know, I think people, you know, recognize what city government does. You call the police, they plow the streets, they pick up your garbage. But, you know, what role does the county play? And of course, human services is a big part. You know, the sheriff's department, especially in some of our rural communities, public health in terms of education, prevention, and treatment, everything from lead paint to STDs, you know, planning and zoning. And so trying to make sure that we're promoting and demonstrating value, that we're an effective, efficient, transparent government, but that we're getting input from the public. So that what we're doing is in line with what the people's priorities are has probably been the biggest challenge. And I recognize this in the campaign where you would try to talk to people. You know, I'm running for county executive, and they'd be like, you know, I was up in Fox Crossing, someone didn't know what county they lived in, and so you know it's kind of hard. So we're really trying to work across departments to get ourselves organized around the kind of government that we would like to have, no matter what department we're in. People will support government if they think they're getting good value. If we can demonstrate that what we're doing is effective and it works. And so I'm trying to get departments, heading into the budget to say, how do you know if what you're doing is successful? And when it's not successful, how do you repurpose or cut or look at doing something else? Because I think we should always be asking ourselves if we're doing the most productive thing with the resources that we have, and if what we're doing is reflective of what the biggest challenges of the community are.
Sure. I've got some questions about that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so you're kind of talking about checking your work in a sense. Where is this program really working? What kinds of checks and balances or parameters are set up for them to review these kinds of things and then get feedback for change?
Yeah, well, I don't want anybody to think that when I said that, like, geez, no one was doing this, and then Gordon Hintz came along and said, what are you doing? No, I mean, I was pleased when I met with a lot of department heads about when I started asking these questions that they do. A lot of them do have, measurements, performance data, goals. We look at different factors that might, external factors that might influence those things. But I said, we need to promote those, share that information with the board, so when they're making decisions, they get it. But also with the public, because sometimes they'll just think, government, they're just on cruise control. And we're in a changing time. There's, obviously AI is playing a bigger role. We're facing labor challenges, especially in a lot of our skilled positions, social workers, CNAs at Parkview, competing with the private sector, that we need to continue to find ways to be able to deliver services that the people rely on in an efficient and effective manner.
You mentioned probably about 5 minutes ago, transparency, and that's a buzzword that we hear a lot these days. What I appreciate and respect about you, Gordon, is that when you say you're being transparent, you are being transparent. Unlike our city manager, who uses the word, very easily, and yet she's anything but transparent, it seems. And so when you were our state representative for the 54th district. You held office hours or town hall meetings, I can't remember exactly what you called them, usually at the senior center. Your role has changed, obviously, as you mentioned, as county executive, but are you still holding meetings with the public?
Yeah, and I mean, this is a part that I've been challenged on because, I have a different role. There are an awful lot of meetings. I've got some big hires coming up. For instance, we're having our first new Human Services Director, which is a huge part of the county in 18 years, a new Planning and Zoning Director for the first time in 25 or 30 years. One of the things I'm trying to, look for in the right person is, can I communicate what I need so, you can execute without having to come to me, because I would like to free up time to get out there, to be able to promote the county, to be able to ask questions, answer questions, to do more town halls. During the budget last year, we went out, we did 5 budget town halls in the community. We answered questions. We did a budget in brief that summarized the document. I've done, Rotaries in Oshkosh and Neenah. Tried to get out there and talk more about what it is that county government does and why, people should care. The other thing I've been trying to do is get out to all the different municipalities. I told everybody the other day I made the trek to the town of Nipieskan the other day. It was a beautiful night. I'll be honest with you, I'd never been before.
Yeah, right.
Just crashing town meetings, but putting a face with the name, letting them know that if they have questions or concerns with the county, they should reach out to me directly. Here's my cell phone number, that we are there to be a partner. And I haven't been everywhere yet, but I've been trying to do my best to get around to the different meetings. There's a lot. And there's some unincorporated areas that I still, I've got a big map on my wall at home that it's on my closet door, and I just stare at it sometimes going, I have never been there.
Yeah. So as county executive, well, let me ask this. How many, and I should know this, but unfortunately I don't, how many county board supervisors do we have right now? Because I know over the years it's come down, but it's still kind of big.
So we have 36.
Yeah,
it's a pretty big board.
I was going to say, that's too big.
We've got about 171,000 people. It's, I think, something like 4,800, per district. Mm-hmm. There are trade-offs. I mean, sometimes it's hard to get, steer, the 36 people in the same direction. Some people think it's good to have, smaller, closer to the people representation. Others say that that's too many to try to govern. But I'll say this: it highlights the diversity of the county. Urban, rural, bigger cities, kind of suburbs. Northern part of the county, southern part of the county. I'm kind of naming what the long-standing divides have been in Winnebago County politics when issues sort of come up. And I guess that's been sort of one of the other challenges. For the most part, it's been good, but trying to get everybody focused on what's good for the collective of the county, and to try to remain focused on that, because you can't be. Everybody should care about Oshkosh's health, no matter what part of the county you're in, and same about the town of Rushford's health. And we're all kind of in the same region.
Sure. Well, let's talk about something pretty serious. When you were elected last April in 2025, one of your goals immediately was to do something about our homeless population when the weather in winter, the temperature hits 0 or below. I know that you came together with a lot of different people and agencies. Talk to us a little bit, Gordon, please, about who all you partnered with in this, where the people went, what the cost was for that, if there's grant money to reimburse the county for that. Give us a picture of what that looked like.
I think one of the biggest challenges we have with homelessness and in the county is, no one's in charge, right? Who is in charge? Whose responsibility is it, to deal with those who are struggling, who have no place to go? County certainly provides a lot of services. John had been pretty actively involved, targeted some of the ARPA money. Day by Day was built, but we know that the need goes beyond that. And we certainly wanted to, when I came in, I said, I don't want to wait till it's zero and come up with a plan. So we sat down in June and said, how are we going to coordinate when this happens, with emergency management, with public health, with human services, with Day by Day, with Salvation Army. And this was still triage, meaning, but I wanted to know, okay, how we're going to deal with it now. I think the longer term plan is, how do we maximize the resources in the community? When we look at a continuum of who does what to serve whom in the community, how can we ensure that we're working together? What kind of things could we do to ensure people have better access to housing, that we could provide the wraparound services that those people that may struggle with AODA issues or mental health issues and need housing, because it really is like treatment first doesn't work, or treatment only doesn't work, and housing only doesn't work. But if you provide housing or can get into housing and you can provide wraparound services, that works. And I think that's the jump we'd like to make. But for this past year, it was, okay, this goes into effect, the public library closes, we're going to keep the State Street Center open. If the beds are full at Day by Day, we'll provide staffing over at the Salvation Army. But I'll be honest with you, even our reactive, work, I don't think was enough. I think 0 degrees is too low as an emergency trigger.
Yeah.
I think most other communities have 20 degrees, and ours is 0 degrees, not wind chill, 0 degrees,
Yeah,
So-
and that makes a big difference because, if you're out there with a wind chill of 0, that's extremely cold already, and then you've got the wind coming along, making it feel even colder, and where are these folks supposed to go?
So I think, in short, it's, we will try to learn from this. We'll try to work out, better arrangements. We're trying to, engage the city more, engage, Day by Day, COTS, Father Carr, Salvation Army. But, I think we do as a community, need to be getting everybody heading in the same direction, and hopefully, build on that.
Sure. You had mentioned about, getting the city more engaged. How engaged were they with this process?
Well, again, whose responsibility is, homelessness? I think
it has to start at the top with our city manager.
Well,
Yeah.
I think, part of it, Oshkosh is, well, like a lot of communities, homelessness is more prevalent now than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Sure.
It's certainly more visible now. I think because the county does human services and provides a lot of services, and because of some of the ARPA and, leaning in that was done, the county took an active role. But the reality is, it's in the city's best interest. Under Project Lift in partnership with the Community Foundation. On the square, there's the new downtown precinct, which is staffed with 2 OPD officers and county human service workers, where they're trying to actively engage the homeless population to try to direct them towards resources, while trying to keep some order, I think, down there.
Sure.
More of a short-term fix, but I think, got the city to put some skin in the game and recognize that we're in a different place than we were.
Well, the nice thing about the city is, I don't think it's finished yet, but building that, that small housing complex on Jefferson Street, and now, Healthy Neighborhoods is assisting to build something else in the 4th Ward. So I will say this about the city, they seem to be moving in the right direction to provide housing for people with low to moderate income. Just a couple things before I let Sarah get back in the game here. You mentioned Project Lift and State Street State Street Center.
Yeah.
What are those?
So if you remember the old Oshkosh Bagosh store on State Street, the county converted that into sort of a day center. So for folks that when they leave day by day in the morning, for folks that want help, assistance, counseling, or that just need a place to lay down, you can go to the State Street Center from 9 to 3 on weekdays. And it's well used. It is well maintained, well taken care of. And again, that's something that I remember on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. The public library was closed, but it was below zero. We paid people time and a half to staff that to keep it open so that people had a place to go in the daytime.
Yeah.
But I think people might not know that is there. Project Lift came out of a community foundation initiative that I served on a kind of a panel of people 2 years ago. We're looking at short-term answers to homelessness and long-term answers to homelessness, and the group is getting together in July again to kind of look at where things are in the community. There were some foundation board members, realtors, some people from the hospitals, others, involved, kind of collectively brainstorming on what could be done.
Okay. Go ahead, Sarah.
So, yeah, we're going to kind of follow along with
Yeah.
the homelessness, but on a bigger view, county-wise.
Yeah.
I would like to understand how the homelessness cycle works, kind of. I know we're talking about Oshkosh, but as a county, where are we with homelessness? Is it cyclical? Do we find more homelessness in the summertime when we have better weather? And then does that become a smaller population in the wintertime? What are their lives like,
I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I think one of the things we're looking to do as a county, hopefully can announce an initiative in September, is to try to have a community conversation, about homelessness. But one of the challenges in Winnebago County government is, Neenah and Ash are part of the Fox cities, and so a lot of the organizations that serve those communities and serve their homeless population are out of Appleton and in the Fox cities. And then Oshkosh has their thing, but we are seeing homeless challenges in Omro. You are more likely to see people on the streets in the summertime. Your first batch of people, that might find themselves unhoused, couldn't pay rent, lost their job, had a medical bill, had an emergency, want to get back housed. Your second group of people is probably same situation, but also might have a drug or alcohol problem, or might have a mental illness. And then you may have a third group of people who has chosen to be, homeless for whatever reason. And again, who knows? There are kind of this idea that, where are these people coming from? They're not from here. But roughly like 80% of the homeless people in your community are usually from your community. And that makes sense because they're going to crash on families' couches. They're going to try to, be around those that they know. And so, we do have more resources, for instance, in the Oshkosh community. I met with the mayor of Neenah the other day and was trying to ask him about, how are things in Neenah? What are you seeing? And, it seems a little different. But again, they have a Fox Cities, they've had a more established continuum up there, from barrier-free care, that I can't even think of the organization's name, provides, and then through organizations like COTS and others up there that have sort of a more established, more developed housing continuum from the unhoused than we do, and I'd like to see that replicated here.
Do you know why? Do you know why we're a little behind on this whole process, or what we could learn from them, or You know, I don't know do they just have better resources or more resources to pull from?
As I understand it, there was just sort of I think they had the conversation on the front side, or, directed resources to the organization to grow, to be able to serve that, they were going to be a barrier-free, housing that, separated adult, males, women and children, youth, meaning,
Do you
into
think
different
that
facilities.
cities like to ignore the fact of their homelessness sometimes because it makes you feel like, oh, we have homeless people, which is not the way you should look at it. But
Sure.
do you ever find people go, we don't have a homeless problem? And you go, oh, you definitely have a homeless problem here. You just maybe either aren't seen it or aren't aware of it.
Sure.
But it's in every town, isn't it?
Yeah.
President
Almost?
Reagan felt that way. He didn't seem to think that as a nation we had homeless problems.
Or that you can just make it go away,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I think that is, and again, I mean, these are someone's loved ones. These are, you're all one step away. You bring up the loss of job, loss of rent. There's, I mean, last summer I was walking outside a Waterfest, and there was, a homeless person, and they're like, "Hey, Gordon Hintz, I voted for you." And I went over and engaged them, and
Yeah.
there was somebody who I knew, but who had kind of fallen off, and but was fully engaged, and fully self-aware, but was going through a rough patch, and I mean, you're getting at everything, right? Is the how do we give a collective community response about why we all have a responsibility and role, and how do we make sure that we're understanding what's possible and maximizing and coordinating the resources that are available. We're never going to be able to fix everything.
No.
But it does also fit into the housing's too expensive discussion, because the hope is if we have more housing and we have more units available, we can get more people that need a place to live into housing.
Not at the rent rates that are being charged in most of these places. And we all have heard the statistics that a lot of people in this country, not just Winnebago County or Oshkosh or Neenah, wherever, but there's so many people in this country who are 1 or 2 paychecks away from homelessness. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and if something, God forbid, goes wrong, it is a month or 2 and they're homeless, and it can happen to anybody if they're not prepared financially with a backup plan or whatever. And that's a scary thing, to think that there's so many people who are in that position. You mentioned about some people maybe choose homelessness. You're not a social worker, I'm not, Sarah's not, but do you have some sense of why someone would choose homelessness? Because it's a horrible thing. I've known some people who were homeless, and they're dear people, and they were having to live in a van, year round, and eat out of dumpsters.
Gosh, I feel like that's just so many things, though, right? It could be an emotional situation where you can't handle living.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to say like, those people, they just want to be homeless. Some of it's about, well, I don't, the place that I could choose to live, has rules, and I don't want to, live by those rules. I think there's some leave me alone, some independence, some, if you've done it and gotten by for a while, it becomes something that you do.
Yeah. Did you have a follow-up question on that, or?
Well, in my head while we were speaking here, I was thinking, gosh, we've got this beautiful city center we just bought for $12.5 million.
Well, we don't have it yet.
But if we do, wouldn't it be a great place for a warming shelter in the winter months till we have a better use for it? That's all. That's my little seed. Anyways, continue
That's
on.
definitely,
That's a big idea, I know,
that
but
could definitely be a
it would
possibility.
be such a great idea if it worked.
There is a potential new tenant in the airport business park. Volare, is that how it's pronounced? Okay, what are they?
So this is really exciting, but if you remember in 2014, and I remember because I was at the groundbreaking, I got to find the picture of me with the shovel, but the city and the county created the airport business park, and this was, I think, a great idea, right? We're going to build on to, adjacent to the airport, hopefully aviation-related business we have all the capacity out there. For 12 years, nothing has really happened. We've gotten money for growing crops there or something. Late last year, early this year, but in talking to Trish from Go EDC, the company's been coming to EAA for a number of years and first reached out about 3 years ago, have been studying the market. It's a company that builds out sort of high-end airplane hangars, business hangars, so like bigger hangars that could be used for airplane maintenance or airplane upholstery, but then smaller hangars that are kind of built to spec. They want all 47 or 50 acres at the county airport under a 50-year lease.
Wow.
And they have 3 projects in Arizona. I think one, complete, but we've been meeting with the owners. It's moved pretty quick, and part of the reason it's moved pretty quick here in the end is that they really want to make a huge splash and announcement at Air Adventure this year because aviation is really changing. A lot of older planes are being retrofitted with new equipment. More people are flying. Airplane sales are up, and commercial aviation has gotten miserable. There are now apps where you can apparently, you can hitch a ride on like a 6-seater from, Oshkosh to Chicago if you don't want to, fly just by, finding a private pilot. And I think Oshkosh is a destination for a lot of these people. They're, coming from Arizona. They were enjoying the weather here the last few days, but, the risk for the county is very minimal. It would be mostly it doesn't happen. And it would be like we've had the last 12 years. But they're capitalized. They have the resources. They have a pretty conservative model in terms of what they need to move forward with the construction of the hangars. They would do the concrete on all 50 acres before they start building up, and they would add a taxiway going along with the one that the county put in a couple of years ago, so they'd have direct access to the runway. But it's exciting.
Well, it is. So if I'm understanding you correctly then, Gordon, so they're paying for the infrastructure themselves, and then they want all 50 acres under a 50-year lease.
Yes.
I think that's tremendous.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the capital that is being infused into the county through something like that. That's wonderful.
So, I mean, fingers crossed, but I felt good after the meeting. I felt like, again, they've got the investors to be able to pull this off. The economy, you're sort of saying, but things seem to be different than they were 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. They've been studying this and thought this made sense the right time, and they think that they can get a lot of excitement, generated at this year if we can move it through the board on June 16th.
So they will. You'll sign a contract then, right after that June 16th board meeting.
Yep.
Okay, and then they'll make the public announcement at.
Yeah,
Air
and there's contingencies and different things,
Sure.
and they can opt out, and we don't get rent until a certain amount of hangars are built and things, but there's no, we're not throwing millions of dollars of county money that is going to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
But it's exciting.
Okay. Want to talk about revolving loan
Oh,
funds?
yes. So I've been trying to research revolving loan programs, and in the process of doing that, I found out that they've just been granted $4.5 million, correct, through Go EDC.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds like there's a lot of facets to what the revolving loan programs can do. Can you kind of just walk us through
Sure.
simply what that 4.5 might go through, and,
Yep.
and anything else that might help the viewers to know how it's working?
So I think it's been even complicated for me, and certainly for the board and others. this has been started, a number of years ago. Actually, County Board Chair Frassetto and, my predecessor, Executive Damel, had started the idea of working on it on the Industrial Development Board. We kind of continued developing it and moved it through committees into the floor, but it took $1 million from the Industrial Development Fund and then $3.5 million from the Spirit Fund or the ARPA to create what would be a revolving loan fund for new housing development aimed at workforce housing or more affordable housing, which I think is 140% or below as a preference. $4.5 million for an entire county is not exactly a game changer, but we wanted to provide gap financing for projects that might need it. I think you would see like the Habitats and others, be looking to take advantage of those.
Sure.
And when access to capital is, a tough thing, we think that we want to do everything we can to be, supportive. We have the resources to do this. In Sheboygan County, they did theirs a couple of years ago with their Economic Development Corporation. I think they put $4 million of their ARPA money in, and then like Sargento, Johnsonville, and Kohler all put $2 million in each. And so they, they've been doing developments in Sheboygan Falls, and then they construct housing, the houses sell, and the money goes back into the pot, and then it goes back out again. So that's the revolving part of it, and the interest that is accrued goes to sustain the administrative costs of the program. The board passed it in December, and then we awarded it to Go EDC. We had 2 finalists to narrow it down to. But hopefully, especially with working with the partners, knowing developers, working with some of the other businesses, they'll be developing the model over the next year, and hopefully in early 2027, we'll see it functioning.
And so is this 4.5 just for housing?
Yes.
So we can't use it for any of the other revolving loan programs, for like business programs?
No. Right.
Okay.
I mean, you're right. Go EDC has an existing revolving loan program, but this is just for housing.
That's fine, just so I understand.
And this is completely separate from, because Go EDC is involved in the housing project that has just been approved for the 4th Ward in the city. This is an entirely different thing that we're
Separate.
talking about. Okay.
Yeah, and there will be a board specifically for the revolving loan fund that will oversee the administration of Go EDC. There are things that are in the parameters. It's always the tough part of the legislation and then the contract being awarded and then getting it actually built into the model.
Takes a lot of time.
And there are a lot of questions and good questions by the board. There will be some things to work out. I'm hopeful that this can play a positive role, but I'm not overselling it.
Yeah.
But I think if we're successful, in Jefferson County, they would help fund 5 houses, they would sell 5 houses, and then they would build 5 more houses and they would sell. I hope that we're able to support multifamily housing, some bigger projects, maybe, I don't even know, how broad some of the resources, can be utilized, but I think we'll see some creative proposals, I think.
Well, and I know I did an article on the that housing development in Sheboygan and Sheboygan Falls. It's highly successful.
Yeah, I think I was reading your article.
Yay! But yeah, it's very successful. So go ahead.
Just because I don't know any better, do you have to, when you're buying land for this housing, does it have to be privately owned, or can it be owned by the city or owned by the county? How do you find the land for the housing?
Yeah, I think it can be. I mean, there will be criteria used, to try to, because there should be more demand than there is, for $4.5 million than there, than the money that's there. and I think the goal is to get the resources to projects that are shovel ready and that have their ducks in the row. I think the board, a lot of board members were like, well, I want this to go to communities that are making it easier to build housing, that are getting rid of the red tape, that are making the approval process, better. In terms of, public-private, projects where, like the Washington School property, where, the city bought it from the school district, didn't they? And then
Yep.
they're
And half
selling
the
it to
homes
Habitat.
are city built, and the other half
Or
are
Habitat.
Yeah, Habitat. For
So I think it
Humanity.
would be
interesting.
eligible for that.
Well, and we have to be cautious as well because, land is, gosh, it's at a premium. We're kind of landlocked here. We got water all around us. And so at some point, it's already getting a little tight, I think, for some folks some developers that maybe want to buy a bunch of land and can't seem to find what they're looking for. So we have to be careful. And at some point, projects are going to have to go vertical. Because
But I've been encouraged by, you mentioned earlier the project on Main Street really looks great. And it was just a great infill in
Yeah.
a block that could use it. And you mentioned, Healthy Neighborhoods. I went to the groundbreaking on Merritt with the open lot and the Washington School, property. And I think Oshkosh and even I've been more active with Neenah, Menasha, older communities that have to do more infill. When I looked at last year's numbers in terms of housing permits, we're pretty good for communities that are landlocked, and a lot of them are aiming to try to support the kind of housing, that's needed. We have other communities in the county like Winnebago County that are just booming right now with a lot of new housing construction.
Amro, too.
A lot of bedroom communities
and
now,
value
too, is-
and home values, through the roof,
Yeah.
because they're not landlocked.
Yeah, well, and Habitat is doing a project in Amro as well, but you mentioned Winnebago County, and Amro is kind of booming as well. So that's a good thing.
Well, we've got the whole south side of the town over the bridge on Main Street that could be, and is getting used. Mill on Main, I think looks amazing. I don't know anything more about it other than what we've read,
Yeah.
but I hope that it does well. I want it to do well.
I toured it. They said that it was filling up. I went to the opening. I don't know about you two, but the south side of Oshkosh in the last 2 years between the Mill on Main, the Theta, some of the apartments,
Yep.
how fast those occurred
Yeah.
versus the normal glacial pace of development. I have this great view every day of the Mill on Main. I also have the great view of the flooding coming up when the water seems to be getting higher, but I just think it's been a transformation really on the south side
Yeah.
of the river, and it's happened faster than anything I remember in Oshkosh.
It did go fast. It was delayed. Oh gosh, because I wrote an article about it, a year before they were supposed to be breaking ground, and then they didn't break ground, and then another year passed, and they didn't break ground. Wood was at a premium because of COVID. That slowed them down somewhat, but I think they had a tough time getting approval from their lender to move forward, because you've got to have, I don't need to tell you guys, you've got to have a certain amount of the properties already spoken for before you can actually start building. And so they were able to finally do that. Once they broke ground and got started, holy cow, you're right, that thing went up quickly.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to be anxious to see when they kick off phase 2.
Right. I think everybody forgets that it's only half
Yeah,
built.
there's 2 more phases that need to be done, so I guess we'll see. There's been some investment in Winnebago County Parks, and rugby and soccer and pickleball, and then there was also something, I can't, here it is, the county dog park. They recently got some renovations, courtesy of some students from Oshkosh North High
Yeah.
School. They got new trees, a picnic table, and an A-frame obstacle. I don't know what that is, but I want to give applause and kudos to those kids from Oshkosh
It
North.
was incredible. So a couple of weeks ago, I got a girl from the communities program at Oshkosh North sent me an email, inviting me to the ribbon cutting at the Best Friends Dog Park. I didn't know that their project was happening, but it was a gorgeous, Friday or Thursday afternoon, and a lot of people turned out, a lot of school board members, a lot of others, and I brought up the dog park as a volunteer. It was developed by volunteers, and I think the organization has kind of struggled. The land there has like an old building underneath it, so it doesn't irrigate well. It's either dry or flooded, and for a couple of years now, I guess this has been a project for communities to try to enhance the park with. They had like sort of dog obstacles, and one of them was, I think, what you just described, like an A-frame bridge, and I said, is a dog even going to go up there? And then of course the dog ran up there, and I was wrong.
I guess I'd need to see it to understand what it really
Oh,
is.
does it just go? Is it just like a shape of an A?
I think so. Yeah.
Simplified.
And then, there's some
Okay.
things for them to run through and stuff. But I would like to see, that enhanced. But into the, and it was great, and the students took a lot of pride in it, and we benefited as they got to take part in something and work on something and have a goal and project. And the communities program at North is really great. I've had a chance to speak with them every few years. But County Park in general, I grew up going there to the swimming hole. My mom took us there every day. That's not there anymore. But we really want to look at recreational tourism. We want it to be a destination. Soccer's been out there for 30 years. I grew up playing soccer there, but again, the fields don't drain well. They're either, you're either losing your skin or you're underwater.
That's your scuba gear.
And so we're, approved a, public-private partnership with the soccer clubs to upgrade the fields, to, tear up all the dirt, redo it. Same with the rugby. I think a lot of people don't realize that, club rugby we've got a very established club. There's only 3 real facilities in the state of Wisconsin that are going to be along the lines of what we're talking about. They have a tournament every year they had a team from Japan there, and they've got some investors who, want to see us enhance the facility there, and hopefully this will breed, other things. I think Andy Buck from the board is active in the Oshkosh United Club with his kids, and I think he said they were going to generate like 20 or 25,000 in parking fees just from
Wow.
people coming to the tournament, and then
Sure.
they can pour that into their part of the development. The local pickleball club activists, where we can't keep up with pickleball. Even that's been more of a municipal function. They came to the county. We kind of said, if you guys raise this, we'll do this. And, with the rugby, with the soccer, with the pickleball, if we get to a certain point of development, would we look at, bleachers or lights? At the parks meeting the other day, they talked about sponsorship opportunities. But I'd really like to take the park to the next level. They've done a lot of enhancements across the street at Sunnyview. With the parking lot, with the drainage. We still are underutilized out there, really with the fair and Life Fest. It's kind of a year 2 or 3 focus for me to try to kind of figure out what's next. But, I'd like to look at like a bike track or something maybe out at the park, something that, when you've got young kids like me, I drive around, or I look up like communities that have this, or if we're traveling, I'm like, what's the coolest playground, or what's the draw? I mean, I go up to Heckrod and Menasha to play at the playground there with my kids. I look for stuff all the time, and I think if we get people coming to our park to utilize it, I think that it'll be great. One last is the Waukau Dam. Also got significant enhancement over the last year. If you've never been, it's amazing. I think a lot of people go, do the Terrell's Island for a little hike. But I would say the hike around the lake at the Waukau Dam, they've got mountain bike trails there that I know people come up from Milwaukee to ride.
Wow.
We repaired the dam, and put in, drainage, so when it overflows, it doesn't all wash away. I took my kids out there in like a late fall day, and it was just gorgeous. But 10 miles away, and western Winnebago County, and trying to do better at promoting these things.
Sure. And I speaking of promoting, I want to again applaud those kids from Oshkosh North for doing what they did at Best Friends Dog Park. But for folks who don't know, we do have a second dog park in Winnebago County, and it's over by Fox Crossing. I think that was developed in maybe the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it's the Finch one, right?
Yep.
Jerry Finch.
Yeah, Jerry was great. He was wonderful, so I'm glad that they named that after him. So I know that one of the things you had wanted to talk about was the Winnebago County or Winnebago-Fox Campus update. There's the county and a group called the the Wisconsin Entertainment Group Venue Partners. They are, currently running the Communications Arts Center and Field House over there. You guys are working on an agreement for them to rent out the adjacent 2-story offices and classroom space.
Yeah. So, the campus is, this has been a challenge, because in addition to, the 27 county departments, the $238 million budget, the challenges that we face that county government is responsible for, we're also now responsible for the redevelopment of a 43-acre campus, with some 60-year-old buildings, the second largest planetarium, and a 16-year-old performing arts theater. It's very important to the community, those assets. We are sort of, had to do a facilities assessment. We wanted to get the theater open. We wanted to maintain the childcare, which we did. We had a 3-month agreement with Faith Technology when they were looking at buying the whole campus. That sort of was in some ways, while I was disappointed, it was a 3-month break where I didn't have to worry about it. Yeah. Didn't end the way I wanted it to. But as soon as that agreement fell apart, I said, we got to get people back in there. Attic Theater, the Fox Cities Community Band, some of the other groups were itching to get back where they had long performed when the university ran it. Jason Lipsky, who's with the Wisconsin Entertainment Group, had been working from the beginning, had the contacts. They organize, do a lot of the work for Life Fest. I think they're actually helping out with Crossroads 41. But the county government doesn't manage performing arts theaters. And so we worked out an agreement, and they've been really great at, they've been booking things, and they've kind of, including the field house, and now have interest in tenants in the building space. So we did a year lease because, we'll have some decisions to make next year. However, I've been working with a group that was involved in the Thrivent development project up in Appleton to create what's going to be a technical assistance panel. It's kind of like a problem-solving group that brings in experts to assess what is economically viable, what will the market support, what would be a good use and repurposing of this campus that accomplishes these goals. So, real estate experts, developers, finance people, but then you interview local stakeholders and others. The community development director for the city of Menasha has been there. We're looking at doing this in early August. We've been meeting weekly to put it together, but we could do an RFP to have a big firm, tell us the economics of the area and make some big renderings of something that's never going to happen. Yeah. Or we can try to, talk to some of the local people, save some money and try to come up with the best redevelopment going forward that hopefully generates some tax base, there's land there to do housing. That might be an option, but, we would like to be able to maintain the planetarium and the theater without taxpayer subsidy.
Because that's a great planetarium. I love it.
I do too.
Even though we have one here, which I think is probably underutilized, but it's a great planetarium right here in town on the campus. We're down to about 8.5 minutes, so I want to try and hit some of the more salient
Speed
points of
round.
what we have left. So labor shortage, how is that impacting county staffing and businesses?
I think if we meet in 5 years, we're just going to be like, wow, there's a lot more older people out there. I just feel like, in meeting with department heads, more and more are having a harder time finding people. We see it in law enforcement, in municipalities and in the county. It's just a challenge, and they did a study a few years ago on compensation study. The county came up with a very generous paid time off plan, trying to make this a desirable place to work. I think we're really going to try to emphasize retention, because that's better, more productive, less training, but it's just the aging of the population, aging of the workforce, and I think we need to continue to find ways to figure out how we're going to be able to deliver the services that we need, many of which are done by people. So stay tuned.
Your strategic plan for the county and county priorities, most of the services that the county provides are, like so much, mandated by state or federal governments, and then the county is left to figure out the money with which to meet those mandates, which I've always thought unfunded mandates are the worst possible thing, and they should be eliminated from the world, I think. But you are left with that. So how are you getting around that? Not getting around. How are you overcoming that challenge or meeting that challenge?
So one of the things we really want to be able to do in the budget this year, for the board, but also for the public, is I think people, we have a $238 million budget, but only, $84 million of that comes from local property taxes.
How much?
About 84.
Okay.
And most of the spending goes towards mandated programs, otherwise required programs. We get money from the federal government or the state government to fund programs that we are required to do. A lot of our county taxpayer dollars go to support programs that are either underfunded or that we would like to provide above what the mandated requirement is. I don't know that we have a good idea of what is our discretionary money. In other words, what are we spending the money that isn't tied to anything on, and does that, is it going towards what we think should be a priority? And so the board will be revisiting the strategic plan in July. I think we have a new board, 13 new members out of 36. We're going to be reaching out to the community in the second half of June to try to get input through a survey, through going to the farmers market. I realize I said earlier, no one knows what the county is, so we'll see what kind of engagement and feedback we can get. But the first strategic plan was more vague, for a reason, and I think we want to kind of get, okay, what are our priorities and goals as a county? And then when we get to the budget in September, okay, what's mandated, what's not, what's unfunded mandate, what's discretionary. And last year we did a really good job of showing, this budget item is connected to housing or transportation or the economic development or quality of life, some strategic pillar, so that people could see, we're doing what we said was a priority. And so we hope to continue to improve on that, and that supports obviously the goal of transparency and accountability too.
Okay. Facilities. There are a lot of facilities within the county that have had maintenance deferred, that they're now just empty or not efficient and that kind of thing. What is the county doing to fix that?
We're meeting last year, or in March, before the new board. The county board advanced a study to do the design of a new highway building. because the existing highway building is obsolete. We now have highway trucks that, have plows that are 3 lanes wide that can't fit in the highway building. So operationally it's defective. The men and women who work there don't have enough space. So this is something that we needed to update. Getting the county to commit to the study means we're going to put it in the budget. That's something that we're going to do. But the bigger issues are really about, like you mentioned, how do we address buildings that are don't serve our needs, are redundant, are inefficient, and are costly, and that probably is going to require some new construction, which is going to require some revenue or some bonding, and we're not going to be able to do it all at once. We're probably going to look at, can we map out a 5 to 15 year plan, and which buildings are we going to take off and which we aren't. The courthouse doesn't meet our needs, meaning it's not safe or it's not operationally compliant with the requirements as a courthouse. You have, I don't know if it's, I don't want to say it wrong because I saw someone said, oh, it's not true, but you have defendants and and victims, mixing in the hallways and the elevators. There's not like separate,
like that. I didn't know if there's like accessibility issues because it was just.
There are accessibility issues in the building as well.
Yeah.
But it's a gorgeous, iconic, historically significant building. So if you were to build a new courthouse, could another county facility move in there and you close another space? Because we need to unplug something from the books. So right now it's about which buildings are the most costly, most ineffective, serve us and serve the public the least. Where are the cost savings? What are the future maintenance needs? And imagining what does the county look like in 10, 20, 30 years, and can we make smarter decisions, for that future? I'm not going to punt, so we're going to be putting stuff forward. Hopefully that aligns with this budget, but getting the highway project was the first step.
Okay. We're down to like 2 minutes, so I guess just kind of in summary, you've mentioned a few times that people really don't understand what county government does or what it is. How can we get more people in our county involved in the county, whether it's, speaking up at meetings or serving on committees? How do we go about doing that?
I think you just gave 2, pretty good ideas. The Herald has been great, and we're, because now they're covering Neenah, Winnebago, Oshkosh, with consistent, county coverage at least weekly. They're at the board meetings, which I'm appreciative of. All the information's there. If we could get people, the same information the board members have is accessible on our website. You can watch any committee meeting, you can watch whatever other meeting. But I think it's, we need to do a better job of promoting the work that goes on, recognizing that people are distracted, that there's a lot going on, that people's lives are busy. You have to meet people where they're at, and I think that's going to be a constant challenge that's worth doing. But
Okay.
yeah.
Just yes or no.
Yep.
Do you guys within your committees, are citizens able to participate like they can with the city?
So the
Oh, don't give me a long answer here. Just yes or
half,
no?
yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm really sorry.
I don't give a very short answer.
They're like motioning to me to end and wrap up. So anyway, Gordon, thanks so much for being here. Let's do it again, not
Yeah.
a year and a half almost later.
I want to
so-
come on and talk about non-county issues.
All right, well, we can do that.
I mean, all issues.
Are you still going to talk about your air guitar win?
We're going to
from-
wrap this up.
It's-
Okay, so anyway, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for
And
having me.
We're going to do it again real soon.
Okay.
Thanks to Sarah, thanks to Gordon, thanks to the rest of the crew, and of course, thanks to you all. We do it for you. So we'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.